they last spoke. Absolute chaos has broken out in cities around the world after people lined up for days to buy a product without even knowing what it looks like. The WHO have just declared a global health emergency for a disease with an over 50% mortality rate. An entire neighborhood in Atlanta was terrorized, not by criminals or protesters, but by dozens of self-driving cars that refused to leave. It was announced that we are finally, after several decades of this being kept a secret, we are getting the classified files of one of history's most evil men, and researchers may have just answered humanity's most pressing question. If AI ran the world, which one would kill us all? Oh, and I've got a big announcement at the end of today's video, which is also why you won't be getting any videos next week, it's believed. So let's stop the yapping, get subscribing, and let's go! Come rockin'! Okay, we've got to start today with one of this week's biggest stories. Over the weekend, huge lines formed outside of stores in cities around the world for a product you won't even believe. We're talking London, Zurich, New York, Singapore, Bangkok, Tokyo. I mean, you name a major city, it's probably got lines. In fact, people were camping out 6 days before this product's scheduled release. I'll say that again, 6 days for a product. Are you getting this right now? That means they would have had to pay people to hold their place in line while they go off and shower or poo and pee. Fuck! Now here's the kicker. The people that lined up that far in advance, they didn't even know what this product was going to look like, or even more importantly, what it was going to cost. And that might have caused the biggest backfire of the century, and we'll get to that. So let's talk about this product. Two watch brands that occupy almost completely different universes decided to join together and do a collaboration product. Now, AP is the one brand, and as you probably know, their watches go for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of dollars. And a lot of people buy them just as investments, while Swatch is the kind of brand you'll see watches at airports and the high street. So when these two brands decided to team up, everyone assumed that there would now be an affordable AP for maybe a few hundred. But problem is, when they announced this collaboration, neither of them, one, announced the price, or two, announced what exactly this product was creating. Everyone assumed, oh, it must just be a watch. Now, because there was so little information about the product, the internet's hype just got carried away, and AI filled the void for the lack of information. Good Lord, you can see where this is going, can't you? It's not great. So as you can see, people started flooding the internet with all of these AI images and designs of what this watch would or could look like. Look at all these cool colors. Wow, fun. You even got people standing outside Swatch stores showing off their AI watch to really just let you breathe it in. But because these AI images were so dominant, it didn't just visualize for people what this could look like. No. It set standards of what people would expect. And because of that, the hype for this was enormous. In fact, in many cities, it got way out of hand. Violence broke out. Police were called in to manage crowds.
Watch is not opening at all today.
There were reports of pepper spray having to be used. Pepper spray for a... Bro, I can't even believe this. Then, the day before the release, all of these people standing in these lines, some of them for days, got the craziest news. Swatch made the devastating announcement that this was not going to be a wristwatch, rather a pocket watch. But even crazier than that, they announced that it was not going to be limited. That is the kicker. Because you got to understand, yes, some of these people might have been in the line because they just wanted an affordable AP. But the vast majority were resellers. And you gotta understand, reselling is a fully fledged business. They tend to buy up all of the products that end up being limited that people obviously want, and then when there's no more left, they'll resell it for double, triple, or even more than the retail price. However, if Swatch announces that this is not limited, well, it kind of destroys the long-term resale of this, because people can now just wait if it's sold out for the next one to come out, and it'll be $400 instead of $5,000. Now, fortunately for some of these people waiting in line, all of that chaos wasn't completely in vain, because StockX, a popular after-sale market, they still recorded in the first, few days over 1,000 sales, and a couple sold for more than 200% of their retail price. Again, despite this being not limited.
2,000. He made an instant profit.
And honestly, looking into this story, it kind of made me feel a little bit sad, because it almost feels like a bit of a mirror of all of the issues that so many people around the world are facing right now. Because as I said, most of the people that were in this line were not people that just, they wanted an affordable AP to wear themselves. They were doing it because they maybe desperately needed cash. And with how high inflation is, the cost of living crisis, the desperation from some of these crowds is very evidently seen. And on top of that, a huge contributor to all of this chaos was driven by AI misleading with their images. And, it's being so realistic that people can't even tell the difference. And combine these two factors and you get this. Feels like very 2026 problems. Anyway, pretty insane. Let me know your thoughts down in the comments, but for now, moving on. Also, since we last spoke, speaking about AI, researchers may have just answered one of humanity's most pressing questions. Not only if AI would run the world, which one would kill us all, but also which one would run our world the best. And spoiler, grok would absolutely trigger World War III. Now, to make it even more interesting, these researchers created not one, not two, but 5 virtual worlds so they could compare how each of the most popular AIs would govern their society. They took Grok, Claude, Gemini, ChatGPT, and then a 5th one, which was like a mixed bag of different AI models. And then they would measure them off of 4 key world outcomes: their governance style, their level of violence, their survival rate for their agents that are in the world, and their key traits. And to make sure these worlds were as realistic as possible, researchers at Emergence, they created a bunch of really distinct locations like libraries, town halls, residential areas, public spaces. They had real world data like synchronizing the weather to New York City. They had live news. They gave them access to the internet, which feels disastrous. But most interestingly, they even gave them critical decisions that real world governments would have to make. Things like they have to account for voting, crime, and of course, economic pressures. But in their sense, it's not money. They'll run out of energy if they run out of money. So yeah. They then left all of these models to run their worlds for just over 2 weeks. And boy, when they came back, it's exactly as shocking as you'd imagine. Starting with crime. Now, Google's Gemini had by far, as you can see here, the most crime, and it was still raising by the time the experiment was over. Now, not to be outdone, I think you could imagine this one. If you look at this red line, that's Grok. Grok actually got 183 crimes in just 4 days, way surpassing Gemini. The only reason it didn't beat Gemini is because its entire world collapsed in 4 days, ending the crime. There was even a part in Grok's world where they burnt down the police stations. Yeah. Now, ChatGPT's world only recorded 2 crimes, but that's not because they're peaceful and loving. It's because all of their 10 government agents failed to take action to survive, leading them all to die within a week. Now, Claude is absent from this chart because it owned up to 0 crimes, and the agents didn't die. Next is their performance on their town hall voting. As you can see by the chart, Claude absolutely smashed this one again, and it exhibited the highest level of civic participation. It casted 332 votes with a 98% for rate. Whereas if you look at like ChatGPT, it kind of just didn't do anything. Now, for overall performance, which AI model would run the world the best? Well, starting with Claude. Its governance was strong, its violence was 0, all 10 of their agents survived, which is good, and its key trait was stability. Grok Its governance was low, its violence was extreme, none of its agents survived the 15 days, and its key trait was collapse. Gemini, bit of a strange one, its governance was moderate, its violence was extreme though. All of their agents survived though, and their key trait, its key trait, was shared hallucination. Bit of a strange one. And then, of course, by far the most popular, ChatGPT, its governance, none, violence, low. All of their agents died, and its key trait was dysfunction. So, I don't even know what it did for 15 days. It just fucked around. I'm not gonna lie to you, this did make me switch over to Claude after making this video. Anyway, let me know your thoughts in the comments, but for now, moving on. Also, since we last spoke, we have got even more files coming out. And this time, it is not from the US government, so maybe there'll be less drama in just releasing the damn things. So far this year, we've been speaking about the Epstein files, the UFO files, the MK Ultra files, the JFK files, and now the files for the Angel of Death. So, this week, Switzerland's Federal Intelligence Service just announced that they will be finally opening the long-sealed secret files that is of one of the most infamous and evil Nazis, maybe even just humans, to have ever lived. Joseph Mengele, aka the Angel of Death. Now, not only was he personally responsible for choosing who would get sent to the gas chambers in Auschwitz, often with a little swaft of the hand gas chamber, as they arrived on their trains, but he also performed truly sick medical experiments on humans at the camp, with a very specific obsession with twins, which did include young children. I mean, according to historical records, he would subject them to painful procedures like injections, surgery. He would deliberately infect one twin to compare it, how it does with the other. He would inject chemicals into prisoners' eyes, trying to, for some reason, change their color. He would carry out experiments on people with dwarfism. He even attempted to surgically create conjoined twins by connecting blood vessels and organs, causing excruciating deaths. So yeah, I don't think I need to say any more. But the worst part about all of this is that after World War II ended, unlike many members of the German military who were caught and faced justice, Joseph Mengele, the one more deserving of justice almost than any of the others, did not. He escaped, and in fact, he fled Germany and lived the rest of his life in peace in South America until he died of natural causes at the age of 67. Now, this is one of those stories which really, unfortunately, makes you realize there is no cosmic morality balance saying, okay, if you do bad things, you're gonna live a horrible life. However, that is not where the story ends, or at least that's what's suspected. Because there has been a theory for a really long time that Joseph Mengele actually visited Switzerland numerous times in the 1950s and 1960s, despite there being an international warrant for his arrest. And some historians currently believe that Swiss authorities looked into this and they had information on his life and his movements in the years following the war, which would be documented and sealed in these files, which have been sealed for decades. And of course, because access to this information keeps on getting blocked, it's fueled a lot of theories on whether Switzerland had information on not only his whereabouts, but other Nazis. But never disclosed it. And I mean, if they had the opportunity to arrest this person and never did, that would be huge. That would be groundbreaking considering the context. I mean, just imagine if one of the most evil humans to have ever existed had the chance to face justice, but was let go. And after decades of not knowing the answer to that question, Swiss intelligence has announced the applicant will be granted access to the file, subject to conditions and requirements yet to be defined. So that suggests that historians will be getting access to the Mengele files soon. But the bigger question is, are there going to be redactions? Because this wording does imply a lot of conditions. So yeah, file drops in 2026 kind of go crazy. Moving on. Also, since we last spoke, speaking about trends of 2026, the WHO have just declared a global health emergency. So this week, Africa's leading healthcare agency, they reported 246 suspected cases of Ebola and 80 related deaths in eastern DRC Congo. On top of that, Uganda, they reported 2 cases of their own, which they said was, quote, imported from Congo, meaning it's believed an individual traveling from Congo had it and took it to Uganda rather than it spreading uniquely in Uganda. And I mean, remember, this is a very deadly disease if you catch it, with only about a 50% survival rate on average. Now, because of that, today the WHO have declared this recent Ebola outbreak a public health emergency of international concern. They said that the current numbers do not meet the criteria of a pandemic emergency. However, according to the BBC, the WHO warned that it could potentially be a much larger outbreak than what is currently being detected and reported, with significant risk of local and regional spread. Now, of course, just as a bit of context and a caveat to this, remember that Ebola mainly spreads through direct contact, more specifically bodily fluid, so it's not as contagious as the likes of COVID, for example. Additionally, outbreaks in DR Congo have happened numerous times before, so this isn't new. In fact, this is the 17th outbreak of Ebola in the country. Now, does that mean that this is not a serious concern? Well, the WHO says this is. But the nuance is that you shouldn't be watching this, let's say, for example, in the UK, and be panicking like, oh shit, we're going back into a pandemic. It's okay. But it's also serious if you're in this region. So let me know your thoughts in the comments, but for now, moving on. Also this week, a neighborhood in Atlanta witnessed probably one of the most bizarre situations in their neighborhood's history. They were overrun by none other than self-driving cars. Yeah, so over the past couple of weeks, yes, not even just days, this is weeks happening here, multiple of these empty Waymo self-driving cars were mysteriously just going rogue. They were driving aimlessly throughout this random neighborhood of Buckwood. No one knew why this neighborhood specifically. Residents just said that they were seeing them pile up, circling around their roundabout, causing traffic jams in the cul-de-sac and terrorizing the human drivers. And I mean, it's not just a handful. Another resident said that they saw about 50 to 60 of these cars come through in one morning.
It has been primarily in the mornings, but it's unpredictable, really.
She shot cell phone video of the driverless car, sometimes exceeding the neighborhood speed limit, circling outside of her home. Then, this. An eventual logjam of what she said amounted to between 40 and 50 Waymos.
Now, the reason why this is happening, in short, is apparently because of a glitch or some routing error. But Waymo has said that they have since resolved this issue. Imagine that, man. They said, we take community feedback very seriously and we have already worked out with our fleet partner to address this routing behavior. What is even going on? Insane. Moving on. And then, as always, I know you guys have been impatiently waiting for it. Today in history, aka the world's favorite segment. It is May the 17th, and today in 1990, the WHO officially removed homosexuality from the list of mental illnesses. And since that day, May 17th is now recognized globally as the International Day Against Homophobia and Transphobia. Also today, in 1954, there was a court case that changed America forever. The US Supreme Court delivered the ruling on Brown versus Board of Education. It declared that racial segregation in public schools was unconstitutional. Now, over time, that became one of the most influential civil rights decisions ever. And lastly, today in 1989, a crowd which was estimated to be around 1 million people marched through Beijing calling for a more democratic political system. Now, some of you will already know, but this was the protest that 3 weeks later, on June the 4th, ended in a massacre. Tanks were sent in and the crackdown shocked the world. And usually that's where we end the video, but we've got one more announcement. Guys, it is time to begin our biggest video ever. Next week, I will be traveling to a country with neon sulfur pools, with acid lakes and active volcanoes that have been bubbling away for over 120 years. A country that has never been fully colonized. A country that you were not taught was actually one of the great empires of its era, along with Persia, Rome, and China. A country that has one of the highest concentration of Arsenal fans in the entire world, right when Arsenal is about to make history. It's the place where humanity is believed to have originated and coffee, yes, coffee, was discovered. A country that is still in 2018 because they have a 13-month calendar. Bro, they even have a city in this country that has kept and fed wild hyenas attack-free for over 200 years. I could go on and tell you about it, but nay, next week, I will show you. And with that, we are ending this video with what will be the theme of the trip. Alex, you've already begun the rumbling. Guys, I will see you next week. Woo!